All right, well, hey there, folks. I'm meteorologist Matt Barentine. We're keeping an eye on the tropics and the possibilities out there. You can see I have the futurecast up. We're keeping it, got it outlined there on the possibility of a system here later next week. That is next Friday that I'm showing you, not today. Next Friday. Now you can see kind of the big picture showing up here with the different systems out there. I'm trying to get everything working. Sometimes it does not want to get going for me, and that is simply the case today. All right, well, yeah, I'm trying. So anyway, well, you can look at the big tropical outlook picture here, and you notice there's still a lot of activity there. I mean, we've got what's left of Helene still kind of spinning its way up in the Appalachians there. Eventually it'll fall apart. And then we got Isaac and we have Joyce out in the Atlantic. Neither of those will have any impact on us, so that is the good news there. And then as we look ahead to the other, there's another area out there in the far Atlantic. I can see that yellow area in the far Atlantic. That is of no real concern to us either, at least not at the moment. I don't see it being any real issue in the long term. You can see with that 20% chance. Then, of course, you see the other one. That's where does that look like? That looks just like what we had with Helene. This is the area that was marked up. This is the area where Helene developed. So very similar sort of setup. You may have already seen on Facebook people posting the model runs of this system and what it could possibly do. You got to take those model runs with a big time grain of salt, because they're giving you 10-day model runs, and they're giving you model runs for making landfall next weekend, going into the first weekend of October and even a little bit beyond that. So it's a ways down the road. I'm going to run this model. I just showed you a little piece of it if you're paying attention. I'm going to run it out 7 days. So it's going to go to next Friday. I'm just going to let it run. And what it's showing is a very weak system developing in the Caribbean, then working its way into the Gulf of Mexico. And I've stopped it here where it's just kind of in the middle of the Gulf, because I don't want you to get too focused on where any one model run says it's going to make landfall. I think this one, this particular model run was somewhere in Louisiana. The model runs yesterday were showing it going towards Tampa Bay. Then the model runs were taking it last night over towards Mexico, and it actually shows another little spin up down there near Veracruz. So there's a lot of noise going on once you get long ways out in these models, and you got to be real careful with that. You remember with Helene, the long range models were bringing it right into Mobile Bay, and once we actually had a system, yeah, the models did great. Remember, once we had the system, once Helene began to show itself, remember, the models were hinting that something was going to happen for days before it happened. I think it was on the Tuesday before that I was first mentioning it on here on Fox 10 that we're looking at something forming down there. But then the actual storm didn't form until over the weekend. So it took, or even the beginning of the week actually, so it was almost a week from that point before it even formed. But once it did form, then the models really got hold of it and gave us a good forecast. Really did. The forecast, once we had a system there for about 5 days out, was really, really good. It was almost spot on pretty much the whole way through. We're not 5 days out from this yet, and we don't have a system yet. Once we have a system, the models will start coming into better agreement. So I want you to be real careful when you see stuff on social media. It's really hard for these models to know where something is going to end up if they don't know exactly where it starts. So that's the problem they have before a system forms. Now, they can give us an idea that a system is going to form, and that's great. That's good information. It's showing us there's a real possibility of a system being in the Gulf next week. Okay, this is Friday of next week. It's showing us a real possibility of that. But I don't want you to thinking that we can tell you where this is going to end up at this point. Until we have an actual system for the models to focus in on, to know where it starts, then we'll have a better idea of where it could end up. So please be careful when you see these models that people post on Facebook and whatnot, that they don't have a really good idea until they actually begin to form. They can give us hints. They can say, hey, we think of, looks like a system is going to form, but as far as where it's going to end up, they're not good at that, until they have an actual system to focus on. Hope that wasn't too much of a rant. I'm just trying to help folks out here. We call meteorologists, we call models guidance, because they give you guidance, but they're not gospel, and you have to be careful, and you have to know what you're looking at. And a lot of times now with social media, people will look at those. You can anybody can go to Tropical Tidbits. That's one of the big web pages that you can go to, one of the big websites. It's Tropical Tidbits, and anybody can go on there, pull that 10, 12-day forecast off of there, then go post it onto Facebook or whatever. Yeah, you can do that, but keep in mind these models, there's multiple models. They run multiple times a day, and right now they're showing multiple solutions to where this will end up. You could freak out people in Louisiana one day. Later in the day, you could freak out people in Tampa. Later in the day, you might be able to freak out people here in Mobile. I mean, just depending on, because each model run, you're going to see something different. So, anyway, that was my rant. Let's look here. Of course, we're doing great. Look at that. I mean, Helene still has a lot of rain for folks up there in Missouri and Kentucky. They're getting still tons and tons of rain. Basically, what's happened is the remnants here of Helene have kind of combined with an upper level low. So it's kind of charged up this upper level low with some with tropical moisture. I mean, there's still a lot of moisture obviously in that. They've had horrible impacts up in the Appalachians, parts of South Carolina, North Georgia mountains, North Carolina, the western end of North Carolina where the mountains are. I mentioned that days before the storm hit, that I figured that would be the case. And they've had more deaths, like I figured, up in Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina than in Florida. All right? And that's all due to that flash flooding, for all that rain getting squeezed out and traveling down. And there's roads washed out. I-40, the big interstate there between North Carolina and Tennessee, has washed out right near the state line. Man, it is rough up there. And like I said, there's already been, I want to say 18 deaths from the last number I've seen from the flash flooding and car wrecks up that way. So rough situation up there. And unfortunately, though, it was expected. I expected the inland areas to have more issues than what people were pretty much expecting, because it's just the way it was set up. Our area doing great. We got a great night ahead. You want to do some Friday night football? It is going to be absolutely fantastic for that. Let's get into it. Let's start off with our big Friday kickoff out there for this evening. Let's go ahead and get this rolling. And we got a Eastern Shore rivalry, the biggest Eastern Shore rivalry, Daphne and Spanish Fort. It is going to be absolutely fantastic for that big game. Temperatures in the 70s. Oh man, clear skies. Hey, you can wear jeans if you want to, not because this is going to be cool or anything, but just because you can. It won't be hot. And beautiful for our game of the week, TR Miller and UMS Wright. Fantastic weather in Mobile for that one. Temperatures once again in the 70s, clear skies, doing just absolutely fantastic. Here's a big one as well over in Fairhope. Theodore's coming on in. Temperatures once again upper 70s at the start of the game. Gosh, that looks great. And then here's another big one. Davidson, McGill, Tulane, once again in Mobile. Once again in the 70s for the game. All right, maybe you're headed up to Jordan-Hare tomorrow afternoon. Look at that. That is in the middle of the afternoon on Saturday. Middle of the afternoon, and it's going to be in the upper 70s. I mean, yeah, if you're out sitting out in the sun, obviously it's going to feel a little warm still. I mean, don't think you could sit out there in a sweatshirt or something. That's not going to be the case. But still, man, compared to where it could be, 10 degrees or so warmer than that, and that's pretty awesome. Great conditions there. How about Bryant-Denny? Check this out. If you're going to the Alabama-Georgia game up there, remember to get there early, because Trump is going to be there, and there's going to be a lot of security to get in the game. So make sure you're there early to get in the game. Look at the temperatures. It starts out in the mid-70s because it's still daylight, but once that sun goes down, it quickly drops off into the 60s. Once again, I wouldn't wear a sweatshirt or anything, but boy, it is going to be really, really nice. In fact, you may need a very light windbreaker, just because we're not used to anything cool at all yet, and you might get a little bit of a breeze depending on where you're sitting. So you may need just a bit of the thinnest, sort of windbreaker you have. I mean, I wouldn't, but some people do, and if you're cold-natured, you may want to do that. It is going to be fantastic for the Georgia-Alabama game. Hopefully the game is good. That's going to be a big one. Another game going, of course, this weekend is South Alabama. Jags they got to take their game over to LSU, so they signed up for this one. It starts out pretty toasty. Don't get me wrong. If you're doing tailgating over there, it's going to be pretty warm in the afternoon, upper 80s. But once the game gets going and the sun is setting, temperatures will cool off pretty quickly into the 70s, and it'll be pretty comfortable there in Baton Rouge. So looking pretty good out there for the games. Here is your 7-day forecast. I mean, look at this. Obviously, I was talking about that possible tropical system in the Gulf maybe next week, sometime around Friday. So you see there's absolutely nothing for us to worry about. Otherwise, I mean, we're going to be keeping an eye on that, obviously, but look at the forecast for the next 7 days. Now, it does turn hot again. I mean, I was hoping, maybe we could put the 90s behind us and that be that, but unfortunately, we are going to be looking at the possibilities of some 90s at the beginning of the week, well, for most of the week, actually. But at least the mornings will still be pretty comfortable. Remember, the nights are getting longer now, so that'll help out, helping us, drop off into the 60s at night rather than just staying in the 70s. So, not quite as humid either. It's not as humid as it was a month ago back in August and July. So that's going to help us out too. But it's still going to be pretty warm. But hey, late September tends to work out like that. Of course, Tuesday there is going to be the start of October. In fact, I need to get that in. I always like to mention that just so that folks know. Just to keep it in sight. So let's see, Tuesday would be October 1st there. Let me apply that in there and see if I can't get that to pop in there. So Tuesday is October 1st. It looks like we're going to start October on the warm side. There we go. As we move into October, pretty toasty there, but nothing terribly unusual. This happens quite a bit. So enjoy the weekend, though. The weekend's going to be really comfortable. We're looking at mid to upper 80s for highs, 60s in the morning. So really nice out there. Enjoy it. Have yourself a great weekend. Check back in with us here at Fox 10. We'll be on all night, 3, 4, 5, and 9. We will catch you soon. Bye now, folks.